Hey, what's going on, everyone? So I wanted to walk you through what we've done so far with this new bias matrix dashboard that we're building. But I wanted to take a step back and really just talk about the problem that we're trying to solve. It's a problem that I have as a day trader, and I'm sure many of you have the same problem. But it's really trying to navigate and understand the connected markets, right? Because trading NQ and ES, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And if you really want to get a good sense of the bias and what's happening in the broader context of the world, like you need to look at things like bonds and the dollar and yen and things like that. And so I wanted to walk through a bit of those concepts and kind of what I've picked up over time, but then also kind of demo the dashboard that we're looking at, which really is meant to shortcut all this analysis. But before I dive into the presentation, I did want to walk through like this topic of like intermarket analysis is not a new topic. You can Google it. There's a bunch of books written out there. And I became interested in this because I really wanted to just understand like more of the mechanics of the markets. And as I got deeper into it, I realized that it's very complicated and very nuanced. And really trying to learn and become an expert in this, I really felt like I needed like an economics degree or something. And I was like, okay, like I kind of understand the rules, but I don't really, which led me to kind of find ways to shortcut certain things. And so I'll talk about that in a bit. But if you do just a quick like internet search, like VIX for futures, there's like stuff out there for like looking at VIX and using that to trade futures. From Ninja Trader, it's like, well, what are the things that can impact the price of NASDAQ and all that? And it's like, well, economic indicators, the USD, like all these things, right? And so you have to really pay attention to it. And so like one of the things that I like to do every morning is, I like to look at what are all these markets doing and just to get a sense of it. But even as you're looking at like all these charts, you have to kind of do the calculation in your head of like, hey, if this is going down, what does that mean for NQ? If this is doing this, like what does that mean? If oil is doing that, what does that mean for NQ and ES? And so this was kind of like one of those things where I tried to like use AI. I tried to like really become an expert, have cheat sheets and stuff. Like, if X, if oil does this, then it means X for NQ. But like I just never really was able to get anything that I could use really quickly. It was always very time consuming. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to try to solve. And one of the ways that I tried to solve that with TradingView was I built this indicator that kind of had this logic that gives me a really quick view of like, okay, like here's what's happening with all these instruments. What does that mean for NQ? What does that mean for ES and gold, right? And so I would use this to kind of give me like a sense of bias, and then I would look at my charts. But this is a very naive approach. It was only looking at like price and EMAs and stuff. And coming to ATASX and Orderflow, it's like, okay, there's so many more factors that we could look at across all these instruments. And so I was really always curious, like how we can kind of bring that together. I did want to walk you through just at a high level, like how all these things are connected and what I kind of picked up over time. So obviously the first thing that I was talking about is like markets don't move in isolation, right? So you have to look at things like VIX, like what's going on with VIX, that's volatility, what's going on with the dollar and what's going on with the yen, because there's a whole like the carry trade that they talk about, what's going on with bonds and bond yields. Obviously you have to watch Nvidia and the top names and certain sectors and things like that. And also looking at like what does the dollar strength look like and what does that mean for the broader commodities, the broader markets and globally, right? What's interesting is, if there's this book, the Intermarket Analysis by John Murphy. He has some books, and I guess he's a leader in the space. But he had like a theory that he put together, and the idea is that dollar drives commodities, commodities drive bonds, and the bonds drive stocks. But I think it's also important just to know how all these things do interplay. Like global economy and everything, like nothing happens in a vacuum, and really understanding the breadth of the market is really important for context. I think for day trading, I think it's just you want to stay on the right side of things and try to follow the broader bias, so you have the higher probability, or at least being on the right side of price as it moves where it's going. There are frameworks in how they think about this, right? It's like when you look at VIX, this is meant to be kind of the volatility index. So obviously, the higher it is, people are scared, there's fear, stocks are plummeting, things like that. And the lower it is, the safer it feels for, you know, stocks and everything to kind of go up. And the good thing is, because it's all numbers, it's all math, right? And so you can kind of build that into something to automatically tell you, like, hey, this is what it means, so you have that context. And then, you know, the thing with the yen, it's the idea is that the carry trade is basically institutions can borrow cheaply from Japan because they have really low interest rates, use that money and do what they do. And then they get a higher yield on US assets, right? And so that becomes the carry trade, quote unquote. And so with the yen, the idea is that if the yen is weak, then that's good, right? Because then you can borrow more cheaply, then you can use it to buy US assets and make money in USD. And that's the whole idea. If the yen gets strong, then that's not good for the whole yen carry trade and all that. Read that bonds are meant to lead equities. So if you see, you know, bonds going up, equities should go up. If you see it go down, equities should go down. And then same thing for Nvidia. I mean, this is tech. It's mostly just driving everything NQ, to be honest. Driving everything AI. And it's the biggest, you know, it's 10% of the NQ. So it's really important. And so that's one of the things I always watch, that and semiconductors and all that. And also just looking at the dollar. Because we do live in a global economy, a super strong dollar is great for the US folks, but then globally it's not. And, you know, a lot of the companies that are in the S&P and all that, they are global, right? And so a strong dollar does create headwinds globally. And so that's, again, another nuance where, like, you should know, like, you as a trader, you should know that. But me personally, I still haven't quite figured out exactly when I'm looking at a DXY chart, like what it actually means. And this has always been my problem here, where it's like, okay, I'm reading all these things, like VIX is falling, like JPY is up 4%, ZN's down, Nvidia is, you know, down pre-market, DXY is at 104. Like, what does that mean, right? And so this is why I set out to try to build something that really shortcuts that that decision-making process for us, so we can just focus on our charts, our execution process, but then take the bias that's based in data and based in numbers to give us the directional kind of bias for the day, right? That's where we built this market bias matrix, which basically looks at, you know, what's happening with the top indices, what's happening with the key macro instruments, what's happening with all the sectors that we should care about, and what's happening with our top equities. And the idea is that it would score and look at all these sections independently, see how they're doing, and then have some formulas built in that basically say, okay, for these different sections, what does that mean for NQ? What does that mean for ES? And so the idea is that you get a bunch of signals in and you get one bias out, and, you know, we would do this in near real time, and so you can use this for day trading. And so that's the problem that I was trying to really solve with this bias dashboard, because, like, I personally, I know that these things are important, you know, VIX, the dollar, the yen, bonds, all the stuff. Truthfully, I'm not an expert, right? And so, but I know it's important, and I want to be able to leverage that in my trading, all right? And so this is why I kind of built this dashboard. You may have seen this version of the dashboard. So this is currently on the website. It's like the initial demo that I had, and it was basically an evolution of this trading view dashboard, and in trying to put it actually as a dashboard that everybody could use. And I thought it was really good. I use it, I've used it for a while just to give me a sense of things. What we're currently working on, it's still in development. So it's still in development, but the idea is that you can come here, every morning and basically get your bias for the day across all these different sections that matter, right? And so you look at indices, you look at macro, you look at the top 8 equities, you look at the sectors, you look at VIX, and it'll just give you at a glance, like, how are each of those performing from a bias perspective, and also how are, the instruments that you're trading performing. So the way that we are scoring all of these instruments is with 3 different factors. So we're looking at trends. So this is essentially looking at price versus key levels. And we're looking at delta. So this is basically, looking at buyers and sellers and who's winning. And then we're also looking at flow. So this is looking at volume pace, where price is in relation to the volume area. Also, we're going to add options flow in the near future. And while this does look simple, there's actually a lot of different factors that are built into it, which I'll make another video that really goes into the nitty gritty. But the idea is that we're taking all of these instruments, we're scoring all of these factors, and then we're rolling it up into a score, right? And so the idea is that I wanted to be able to just take the data that's there, like what's actually happening with each of these instruments, everything from like what is the price doing, what are buyers and sellers doing, and what is the pace of volume doing, um, and then pulling that into a score to be able to give a bias for what does that mean, right? And doing that in a consistent way. Because if you remember back to the screenshot of all the charts, it's like, yeah, you can read the charts, but like you're not going to read them consistently every single day. And so the idea is that it would remove that cognitive load from us as traders, and then we can just say, okay, like trends are bullish here. I can take that context and actually move on to my trading for execution. And so that's definitely the idea. Then you have, this is the daily bias. So this is looking at the last 5 days of price on 4-hour charts. And so you kind of see what's going on there with NQ. Like we had that sell off here overnight. Bias turned a little bit bearish, but we've rebounded to neutral and now back to bullish, which, that's what it is. But then for this, you can say, okay, like, well, what's happening here? It's like, oh, for indices, you can kind of click that and say, okay, like everything seems to be bullish except for gold for NQ. That's slightly bearish for NQ because gold is actually pushing up. And then the EU is a little bit bearish, so that's a little bit bearish also for NQ, right? And so that gives you a slightly bullish score for NQ for the indices, right? And then you can look at macro and you can say, okay, what's happening across all these factors, and like what does that mean for NQ? You look at the top 8 equities. So for top 8 equities, we only have price for now. We'll put in the other factors soon, but for now you just have price. And you can kind of see here like Microsoft was leading, and so you just have that context really quickly at a glance. For sectors, obviously technology was up, financials was down, energy, and so all of this is only slightly bullish for NQ. And then for VIX, you can see we're actually kind of in an ideal regime for VIX, which is good. So which is very bullish, right, for NQ. And so you kind of have all that at a glance, which is pretty amazing. And what's really cool with the dashboard is like you can have this daily bias view coming into the market for the day. It's like, okay, here's what the broader last 5 days look like. So definitely keep that in mind. But then let's say, okay, like for day trading, a little bit like nearer time frame, what do things look like? And so this is going to be looking at the last 8 hours, rolling 8 hours on 15-minute charts. And so you can see we've been just bullish the whole time. Trends have been bullish, volume has been bullish. Delta is a little bit neutral, so that's interesting. Sellers are trying. I mean, you'll see that in your Orderflow platform as well, but it's just really cool to be able to get that at a glance. And then you also have like how everybody is performing at this lower time frame, which is really cool, right? And so you can kind of see, on the lower time frame, mostly on the equities front is pretty bullish, which is really good. And then if you wanted to say, okay, for scalping, like I'm looking for scalping bias. So this is going to be looking at 3-minute charts over the last 90 minutes. So really shorter time frame. Again, looking at all the factors, everything looks like it's good, pretty neutral on Delta. Well, right now the market is closed, so it's after hours, right? And so you can kind of see here a little bit neutral there for the top equities. But if you wanted to look at indices, then you can kind of see how things are looking there. But again, like this is just meant to be at a glance. Now I have this idea, like we're obviously bullish. This is based on math. This is based on data. It's not me interpreting and looking at charts and all this stuff. Like it's really just based on what's happening with the trends, what's happening with the delta, what's happening with the flow, putting it into it, doing the calculations, and just giving me my bias for the time frame that I'm looking at. And then from there, I can move forward and kind of execute on my trades. And so I'm really excited about this. I'm still working on and validating a few more things, but I really feel like this will be useful for a lot of traders, and I will make it available to everybody. Just start using it, give us feedback, because I want to validate the use case before we really go deep. We have a few more ideas around levels and AI and things like that, but we really want to validate the use case that I described of just shortcutting all the macro analysis and just giving you, here's what it is, here's your bias based on all the data, and then you can go focus on executing your strategy. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. There's more here. There's even replay that we built into it, so you can look at that. We have the prior close, so you can look at that and just say, okay, how did RTH close today? and like what was that, what did that look like from a trading perspective, and then you can take that bias going into the next day, right? And so you can kind of have that, which is really, really cool. I am day trading myself, and I will use this every day. We'll probably do another round of validation for the next week or so, and we'll make open access available to everybody. You should just be able to sign up. You can use it and then just give us feedback and give us feature requests and stuff like that so we can make this better. Thanks for hanging out, and good luck, and don't get caught. Thank you.